welcome back to the channel. I'm Sophie if you're new here, and this year I have read a lot of books, so I thought it would be fun to make a video about my top 10 favorite books that I read this year and maybe even convince you to read them. As a huge book lover, I'm really picky about my books, and if a book is just not that good, I won't even try to finish it. So my top 10 books are books that I genuinely really love and would rank them somewhere in the 6-star territory. I'll have every book linked down in the description below just in case you want to check them out. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So before we begin, my top favorite genres are fantasy and romance. And the best tropes in my opinion are enemies to lovers, he falls first, and villain gets the girl. I also really love and prioritize a strong female main character because who doesn't love a girl boss? And I'll be ranking these books from 10th favorite all the way to number 1. So with that all being said, in 10th place we have Fearless by Lauren Roberts. I really love this book. I love the entire series. This is a fantasy romance book that is also young adult, and it's a mix between Hunger Games and Red Queen. It follows Peyton Gray, who is an ordinary in a world of elites, and if you're ordinary, it basically means you have no powers and are therefore hunted for your existence. Kai Azar, who is the main love interest, is a prince of the kingdom and is also a really powerful enforcer. His literal job is to basically hunt other ordinaries like her, but Peyton has so far slipped under by pretending to be a psychic, and one day after she saves Kai, she is selected for the purging trials, which are these deadly trials to showcase the elite's powers. And now Peyton is forced to interact a lot more with Kai while fighting her growing feelings and keeping the fact that she's actually ordinary a secret. And this was all in the first book. The third book also has a lot of banter, and I thought it was just the perfect conclusion to the entire series. Next up in 9th place we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I was actually really surprised to like this book as much as I did because it doesn't have a traditionally happy ending. It's about a girl named Addie who was cursed many centuries ago to become immortal, but it was at the cost of being forgotten by everyone that she has ever met, including her family, and she's basically gone through her entire life up until present day being practically invisible because everyone forgets her as soon as they meet her, until one day she comes across a guy in a bookstore and he actually remembers her. And this book had such a good romance as well as some crazy plot twists. I really enjoyed this book and I highly recommend it. Coming up in 8th place we have The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. This is one of my favorite romance books of all time. It's a sports romance with fake dating, enemies to lovers, and forced proximity. It follows Ryan Shea, who is an NBA captain, and Indy Silvers, who just got cheated on by her ex of 6 years. Life is just kind of a mess right now. She doesn't have a place to stay, but her best friend convinces Ryan, who is her older brother, to let Indy stay at his place at least until Indy can find a place of her own. Even though Ryan hates when other people are in his space, he agrees. And the process of them getting accustomed to living with each other is so funny. There is so much banter in this book, which I really love. And soon Ryan realizes that he actually needs Indy's help because as a new captain, his team's manager doesn't really like Ryan because Ryan can come off as cold and distant, and the team manager just doesn't think that Ryan is a good fit as captain. So Indy agrees to help him by being his fake girlfriend, and while they're acting in their fake relationship, they start to get real feelings. And this book was just so sweet, and honestly the perfect romance book for when you just want a sweet romance with a bunch of swoon-worthy characters. Next in 7th place is It Happened on a Sunday by Tracy Wolff. This is also one of my favorite romance books, and I'll be so honest, it's partially because this book reminds me a lot of what's going on in real life. I'm a huge Swiftie and this book just speaks to me. Sloane Walker, who is our female character, is a superstar, pop star celebrity, and she's currently on the biggest tour. And Mateo Sylvester is a professional football player who is also a quarterback and goes to see her on one of her tours. He's a rising football star and she's a celebrity that everyone either loves or hates. And Sloane also has a pretty dark past, but Mateo doesn't care about any of that. And I honestly love this book so much and I highly recommend it, especially to all my fellow Swifties out there. Next is a really popular new release and it's Brimstone by Callie Hart. I really loved reading Quicksilver, which was the first book in the series. In the first book, Sarah Spain, who is our female main character, discovers that she's an alchemist, which means that she can control Quicksilver, which is a really powerful and magical metal. And one day Kingfisher, who is a Fae warrior, drags her through a Quicksilver portal into another realm and forces her to make weapons for his entire army, which is problematic for a few reasons. One being that his army is huge, and the second problem being that Saris doesn't know how to use her powers since she just discovered them a few days ago. But Kingfisher doesn't care about that, and this fantasy romance book is enemies to lovers with a lot of good banter and really lovable characters. One of my favorite characters in this book, Carrion Swift, is hilarious and says all the things that he shouldn't be saying at the wrong times. And even though this book has an amazing romance, the plot is also very detailed, and there were numerous plot twists as well as a very big cliffhanger at the end. In 5th place, we have Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is the first book in her Boys of Tommen series, and it's by far my absolute favorite. It is a super angsty romance book that's also really funny. The banter, the plot, and the characters, everything was just on point. Shannon Lynch is our female main character, and she comes from an abusive family, and she's also been bullied like all of her life. So when she moves to this new school, she just wants a fresh start and stay under the radar. But that all changes very quickly when Johnny Kavanagh, who is a star rugby player, accidentally hits her in the head with a rugby, and they start talking and becoming friends, even though it very quickly becomes obvious how much they like each other. And this is one of the least problematic romance books that I've ever read. Johnny is as far away from toxic as you can possibly get, and he would do absolutely anything for Shannon, and this was honestly a perfect romance book. Next up, coming in 4th place, we have The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is a fantasy book that changed my life and how I see fantasy books and real life as a whole. It is a fantasy book and takes place in its own world, but it was inspired off of real life events, and the way the author writes is so descriptive, and I just felt like the emotions hit really hard. And I remember when I was reading this book, I was just so entranced by the writing. The amount of action that was going on just made this book unputdownable. I finished this in one sitting and was left in complete shock. It's about a war orphan named Rin, whose guardians are opium dealers and want to sell her off into an arranged marriage. Rin doesn't want to get married to some old abusive guy, so she studies to become the first war orphan to attend a prestigious war academy, where once she makes it, she's faced with all kinds of discrimination. But the academy becomes the least of her problems because there is a very deadly war going on, and Rin has to learn how to master her new powers that were given from the Fire Phoenix and learn how to control her powers before they completely consume her, literally. This book has a lot of graphic war themes such as war crimes, but every passage from this book was an absolute masterpiece. This book has a very slight subplot of romance, specifically enemies to lovers, which is the best kind, even though I will say right now that this is not a romance book. Every page out of this book was a complete masterpiece. Okay, now that we're getting close to the end, in 3rd place we have Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. It is the 3rd book in the Imperium series and one of my favorite books that I read this year. Xaden is now a Venin and technically evil, and Violet is trying to do everything that she possibly can to come up with a cure and save him. The amount of angst in this book was on another level, and the ending left me staring at a wall in shock. At first I was worried to read the 3rd book because I just didn't think it would live up to the hype, but now I'm thinking it might be my favorite book in the series. I can't believe that we have to wait so long for the next book to come out. I love this book so much because the banter, plot, and everything about it was just perfection. Moving on to the 2nd best book that I read this year, and that title goes to The Wolf King by Lauren Palfreyman. If you were a fan of A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas, then I would highly suggest reading this series because this is the closest that I've ever gotten to reading something similar. Instead of fairies, you have werewolves. Our main character, Aurora, is a human princess who gets kidnapped on the day of her wedding by a werewolf and is taken into the werewolf kingdom, where she is treated like a pawn, but slowly starts to get to know Callum, who is the werewolf alpha of a pack, and she realizes that not all werewolves are monsters. There are a lot of dangerous politics going on, not just between the werewolves and the humans, but within the werewolves themselves. There's also another darker force that is going to be a threat later on to both the humans and the werewolves, and somehow Aurora is at the center of all of this. This book has a love triangle and it is enemies to lovers. However, unlike most books, this love triangle is actually done right. It was a really good love triangle and didn't leave me hating everybody involved. I highly recommend this book, and like I said, if you were ever a fan of A Court of Thorns and Roses, then you will love this book. Moving on to the best book that I read this year, the #1 spot goes to Alchemized by Senlin Yu. Let me tell you, I have never read 1,000 pages so fast in my entire life. A whole day literally went by and I did nothing but read. This book was originally a Draco and Hermione Granger fanfic. There's a war going on between the necromancers who believe that bringing people back from the dead is okay, and the alchemists who don't believe in dark magic. Helena is a healer and the last resistance member alive because the alchemists have officially lost the war, and because Helena is a resistance member and maybe has secrets in her mind, she has been given to one of the most powerful necromancers, Cain Farron, to dig out her memories and see if there's anything of substance. Cain Farron is also our male main character. He is morally gray and would do anything for those that he cares about. There were a lot of trigger warnings in this book because it also does contain a lot of dark war themes, but even with all of the emotional damage, I love this book so much. The tension, the angst, and the plot was all there, and this book 100% deserved the #1 spot. Well, those are my top 10 books for 2025. Let me know what your favorite books this year were. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like I said, all of the books are linked down in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing holiday, and I'll see you in the next video.